Good morning, everyone. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Well, yesterday we were investigating some rumors that were running rampant on Facebook and on Reddit related to the Duggars. And today I'll go into detail what I think is going on because I've yet to really form an opinion. But last night, as everything kept getting more and more riled up and people started, spreading things further, and I should note that my colleague my former colleague, Suzanne, who runs the website No Longer Quivering, who actually covers the Quiverful movement and sort of the very destructive behavior of people within the movement and the abuse and all of it that happens, who extensively covered Josh Duggar back in 2015. She posted about it, and she and I talked extensively about it, and there were definitely red flags that both of us thought that were there, but neither one of us were willing to make a decision either way. But since it was rumbling so much, we both felt like we should probably say something, whether or not it's actually true. And Suzanne's a fairly fair person, so if she's wrong, she'll say it. But in this case, she never confirmed nor denied, just showed what people were saying. So last night, as things sort of ramped up and got more complex, a Facebook page that actually covers Duggar family news and is referenced or called, nicknamed, or goes by the name Pickles. It's an anonymous person that appears to not want the public to know who they are, and that's fine. But the person that runs the page actually spoke out about it and said that everything that they could find was false. So there's Pickles. That's the picture from the website. It's called Duggar Family News. Life is not always pickles, or something like that. And this is what they shared. Life is not all pickles and hairspray. And they said, I guess I need to acknowledge the annoying elephant in the room. Many are contacting me about an FBI raid on the Duggar compound involving Josh. I've heard it's about tax evasion, pedophilia, money laundering. They say it went down Saturday morning, and Anna and Jed had locked down their Instagram accounts. The rumors seems to have begun from a crazy days and nights blind item. I long ago banned these blind items from my site. They are just plain BS. I guess some decided they wanted to believe the rumors and ran with it, and it's gotten totally out of control. I could find no evidence that this rumor is real. Anna, Joy, Jeremy, and Joe all posted on their Instagram accounts yesterday. None of them have closed their comments, but I'm sure some comments concerning the raid have been deleted. I've been deleting them too. No proof of anything can be found in Arkansas news. No local sources whom I've talked to in the past know anything about this. But if you know anything, please send me a direct message and I'll investigate. The photos below were posted by the Duggars on their page about an hour ago. It looks like they were visiting Amy today. Amy commented on her Instagram that the story is a rumor and she wouldn't respond to it. So let's just drop this rumor unless someone can link me some real proof. Sites repeating this rumor is not proof. And Touch Radar or Daily Mail, if you're reading this, please do your magic. Contact local law enforcement and find out what you can. I doubt you'll uncover anything, but there's always a good thing to run an occasional crime check on the Duggars. Can we all calm down now? Now, so they claim that there's nothing they can find. And I will say that when I spoke with my media contacts that had connections to law enforcement and the FBI in Arkansas, they also told me that there was nothing that the FBI provided them in relation to a Duggar investigation. There was also multiple people from the community that came forward and commented on my video and told me that there was no investigation going out there in the area. Many locals said they don't really like the Duggars, but they hadn't heard anything recently about what's been happening. And then someone else stated that someone said that they saw some sort of a security guard on the Duggars car lot for their cars, and that person said that it's really not uncommon that they use security guards for the car lot because fans have been noted to go there, vandalize, get sort of reckless, and so it's not uncommon that a security guard would check on the car lot when it's not open. They also noted that a previous person's comment that seeing cops in the area was not normal, they said that's not true either. They said there's cops and they're typically always dressed in their gear, so this assertion that the cops were dressed in gear and it was unusual, they said was incorrect. So in the world of the Duggars, if something would be this big, right, typically it would show up in the local media. The local media would be the first to report this, being that they're right there. And thus far, nothing has appeared at all in anything. I have checked records for active warrants. There are none for any of the people involved. I've checked arrests in the past 4 days. Again, there's none for any of the people that are supposedly involved. I have checked the court records to see if there's any open cases. The only open cases for Josh relates to a business lawsuit, but it's not a criminal lawsuit. And really, the rest of the stuff related to James or Jim Bob relates to some guardianship he has with his a young boy, Tyler, that they took guardianship of a couple years ago, and some old lawsuits on some properties. But other than that, nothing criminal. Now, I can see why people would get worked up, because people are frustrated about what happened in 2015 when a story was leaked by In Touch Weekly. Now, in Touch Weekly, they reported an old police report that was found by them from 2006 on an investigation that the local Washington County Sheriff's Office had conducted on a report that they had received from a tip line about some alleged abuse by Josh at the home of the Duggars. So I was able to find some aspects of it. Of the actual report from 2006, and it basically says that they interviewed James and Jim Bob and Michelle at home. They let them know that they had received a tip through the Arkansas State Police Child Abuse Hotline. And when they interviewed him, he said that when Josh had just turned 14, he came to him very upset and crying. Jim Bob said that he had told him that he had been sneaking into the girls' rooms at night and had been touching them on the breast and vaginal areas while they were sleeping. Apparently, all of the girls were sleeping in the common room at this time, and Jim Bob said that it had occurred 4 to 5 times and had occurred once as a family friend was sleeping on a couch. Apparently the girls had always been asleep, and the incidents, when they occurred, and they had later told the girls what occurred, one of them remembered that she had woken up and he was taking away her blanket, but she didn't remember anything beyond that. Now, he says that he disciplined him by going to a sort of Christian camp. In 2002, he said he admitted one night to a female friend that the family was sleeping over, that he had gone to the couch where she was sleeping and he fondled her breast while she slept. She was identified as a friend. She was disciplined after that incident, whatever that means. He says that in 9 months later, in March, there was another incident. He said that Josh was reading to his 5-year-old sister, and as she was sitting on his lap, he had touched her breast and vaginal areas. He said that the little girl then ran out and was standing in the laundry room and had told everyone that Josh had put his hands under her dress. So there was multiple incidents, right? And instead of going to law enforcement and reporting it, they say they send him to this like Christian Piney, they were told to send him to this like program called Piney Ridge, but he was concerned that Josh would just learn how to offend more by going there. So instead he sends them to a Christian ministry in the old Veterans Hospital in Little Rock, and he went there for 3 months. From March 17th, 2003 to July 2003. He said they then spoke to, after completing all of this, they spoke to a state trooper named Corporal Hutchins. And it was at that time, he said after he returned from Little Rock, the church elders decided to contact the police, and they told him about what happened. And it was after that conversation with Corporal Hutchins that they basically stopped any sort of investigation, and Corporal Hutchins never reported him and never made a police report. So when all of this came out by In Touch Weekly, everyone was Absolutely outraged, obviously. And so Jim Bob and Michelle were interviewed by Megyn Kelly from Fox News. And during that interview, Jim Bob and Michelle really downplayed what happened. They insisted that it was always while people were clothed. It was always while they were sleeping, which clearly the report that he gave to the police did not even say that. He said that there was multiple times where people were awake. There's admissions in there that it did happen underneath the clothes. And so people were naturally outraged by the Duggars really insisting that they had done everything that they could for the girls. And again, people were agitated because they didn't actually report it to CPS and they didn't actually report it to police. They used a friend who was a state trooper that wasn't necessarily being used in the capacity of a police officer. So In Touch, after all of this happens, TLC fires Jim Bob and Michelle, and they hadn't been on the air, and they decide to move the process. They decide to cancel 19 Kids and Counting, and instead they decide they're going to focus on the older kids. Well, I think this is where everyone is getting frustrated for two reasons. After all of this comes out, they're no longer on TV. Josh is no longer on TV, but then another scandal breaks with Josh, which he is during this time campaigning as a family rights, family first advocate. And he's basically telling people that, pedophilia, child porn, all of that should be punishable by the death penalty. And then it turns out that he had been caught doing those things. And then it also turned out that he admits to having an addiction to porn, as well as cheating on his wife with multiple women through a website called Ashley Madison, and then using another website, I believe, called OkCupid. So they fire Josh. Josh is removed from the show. Michelle and Jim Bob are banned from being on the new show, and the show focuses on instead the older children that are courting, not like Jill and Jessa and all of that, right? So the frustrating part here is that the corporal that they reported to was arrested himself only 2 years later and charged with what? Child pornography. He served 3 years in prison from 2007 to 2010, and then again in 2012 was arrested once again and sentenced to 56 years for the same charges. So he is in prison essentially for disseminating and taking photos of his family members, publishing them online. And so then that made people feel like, well, he had an interest and a keen interest in this to protect him because he was interested in that himself. So it's very, 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 very messy. Very messy. So the other aspect was that in an interview with an outlet during that time when all of this is coming out in 2015, Hutchins says that Jim Bob told him that Josh had inappropriately touched Redacted during a time when she was asleep, and he said he touched her through her clothing, and he said it only happened one time. He said, I did what I thought it was right, and obviously it wasn't. If I had to do it all over again, I would have told him immediately, I'm going to call the hotline, and contacted the trooper that worked those cases and have a full report made. I thought I could handle it myself. I've lost a lot of sleep over it. I'm a Christian myself, and I worry that something else may have happened. I would have been responsible for it, in my opinion, by not reporting it. That young girl should have been my first priority. So basically he says that, he was influenced by Jim Bob telling him that it was only happening one time. And in the interview with In Touch with Megyn Kelly, Jim Bob and Michelle really downplayed it. And then the girls even downplayed it because you could tell that they had been, Jessa and Jill, had really been influenced by what their parents had told them. So obviously the lack of criminal prosecution and really sort of justice for the 5 girls that are victims of him has people pissed. And I understand it. I also understand that this season of Counting On, Jim Bob and Michelle are back. And that has people pissed. So pissed. Because they have not been on the show for years because of what happened. And now they're back on the show acting as though nothing happened. There's nothing to see here. And we're supposed to forget about what they did and how they covered up what happened with their son and how they've protected him. And that has been the response of how Jim Bob and Michelle have responded since. on their family blog, Michelle has written love letters, as it seems, about how wonderful of a son Josh is, what a great father he is, how amazing he is, when evidence suggests otherwise. He's cheated on his wife. He's done a lot of things that haven't been matching what they think it is. And so people constantly feel like Michelle and Jim Bob are covering up for Josh and not protecting their daughters, which I think is fair. Absolutely fair. And so people are pissed, in my opinion, that they're back on the show. I think people want justice because he never received justice. And I think people will really glom on to any sort of rumor that they hear about that might make them feel will get Josh justice, or they'll get the girls justice and will put Josh away. And I can totally understand that aspect. We want him to get punished, and not through going to some, phony Christian camp that probably provided him little to no therapy. So, in my mind, I see just sort of this mass hysteria created on Facebook and on Reddit and other online sites that have forums related to the Duggars, and it fuels this sort of perpetual need to get them caught in a lie. And there's plenty of reasons not to like the Duggars because of how they handle things with Josh, because of the way that Derek alleges that Jim Bob doesn't pay the children, which in and of itself could be criminal as well. There's been a lot of allegations about their Medic Corp mission work where they pretend to be like paramedics and they fly down to these places, and it's for profit. It's actually not nonprofit. And there's concerns about, Jim Bob maybe there's been like rumors and accusations against Jim Bob related to tax evasion and fraud. And I think what happened here with the human trafficking part is that only last week, there's been this other story of another Christian man, or a Mormon, that was running an adoption scam where he was basically taking women from an island in the South Pacific, bringing them to the United States to get them Medicaid, and then having them give their babies up, whether they wanted to give the babies up or not, from Marshall Island, I believe it was. And Paul Peterson was indicted not only in Arizona, Utah, and Northwest Arkansas, in the same area as where the Duggars live. And one of the charges that Paul Peterson is charged with is human trafficking. And so I think some people were like, well, this is a Mormon that's trafficking people. This is a man that's working as an adoption agent trafficking people. And so I think some of the times lines get blurred, and then we want it to be the Duggars. And I think people want so badly for the Duggars to be in trouble, to go away. And I understand that. But I also think that unless there is an FBI agent or a police officer in the area confirming this, unless a local outlet like the news in Fayetteville or in Springdale or in Little Rock is reporting this, it's really nothing. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be things that are going on, but at this time, there's nothing that I can see that even makes this remotely true. So I do think that if there were something, we would have it, but at this point, I just don't think there is. Now, should people be angry that Jim Bob and Michelle are back on Counting On? I think so. But I think Counting On may be sort of on its last legs. I don't really know how well it's doing in the ratings, but overall, I think there's been a waning of interest in the Duggars. I think people are sometimes fed up with them. I think people are agitated because, Jill and Derek basically get kicked off because Derek makes some statements. And Derek has been sort of making this even worse too by saying, a storm is brewing, and he's talking about legal action against Jim Bob and TLC, and he's talking about how Jim Bob is stealing money. So I think that's another aspect that's really fueling this narrative that they're up to something criminal. But until there's actually an arrest, until there's actually an indictment, everything around this is going to be rumor. And I don't think it'll stop because people are so angry about what happened to the girls that Josh perpetrated on them as a 14 and 15-year-old youth. And a lot of people will say that people that do that can't be reformed. And without proper care, who knows if he's doing this again. And I understand that aspect too, of wanting to protect other children that might be connected to him. So at this point, I will say that this is not credible. I don't know if it's false, it's just not credible. I don't know that I believe it, but again, if someone has something that shows me definitive proof that something is going on, I'm all ears, but at this point I would say not credible. Now, if you guys have questions or concerns or want to share your thoughts, make sure you do in the comments below. I will be back with more this morning on other amazing and fun topics that you guys enjoy. Okay, I'll be back soon. Thanks.